burning. This whole horizon, this is Ardoyne here in the distance, and there was a street called Farringdon Gardens. And people were so afraid of their neighbours, Protestant people were moving out of their houses, and they wouldn't leave them behind in case Catholic families moved into them, so they burnt them. They were burning their own homes. Such was the fear and such was the panic. And that panic was spreading all around the whole neighbourhood, because here people were starting to put up barricades, put cars across the road. This Joy King Chinese restaurant, this was a petrol station at the time, and people were running to the forecourts, and I remember standing here watching people filling up milk bottles full of petrol and putting rags into the top of them, crates and crates of petrol bombs to defend themselves from, I'm sure they didn't know what, but they were going to be ready. And naturally we made our way home as quickly as we could, just a couple of 100 yards, and like many families that night we fled Belfast, and we fled for a couple of weeks. We became evacuees like thousands and thousands of others.
I was a Catholic kid. We had our traditions, and the majority Protestant population had theirs.
My father was a primary school headmaster. I mean, came from a big family, working class family in Ballymena. Working class Protestant family, and when I think of my childhood and the Troubles, it actually reminds me of, you know, the happiness of marching on the 12th.
Every year on July 12th, Protestants celebrate the defeat of the Catholic King James in a battle in 1690. It's the high point of their marching season, and these days it's largely peaceful. But often during the Troubles, it triggered resentment and violence.
As politicians on all sides garnered more power, I think that it became a bit of a political football, the whole marching thing. I do remember all the body searching and all that, and getting up to Belfast and being fascinated by the tanks. But if anything, what it's taught me, you know, time has taught me to see it from a different perspective, and how terrifying it must have been.
The marching season of 1969 was truly terrifying. It ended in widespread rioting and brought the first deaths of the Troubles. Paramilitary groups were emerging on both sides, and the British Army sent in troops in an attempt to keep the peace.
We as a family were sitting in a place called Hillsborough in County Down, about 14, 15 miles from Belfast. And as we were watching the news, there was that unreal element about it. It might as well have been Baghdad or somewhere, except that the reality was there, and yet if you weren't in the middle of it, or if it hadn't landed on your doorstep, it was hard to take on board the enormity of what was to happen and what it was to become.
If you are on the streets in a little minute's time, you'll be liable to arrest.
Most Catholics had at first welcomed the army, but the soldiers soon developed a reputation for heavy-handed tactics, and what support they had in Catholic neighbourhoods was soon lost.
Hit the British Army! Hit the British Army! Clap your hands!
I remember the excitement about the army doing their patrols, because I was Protestant, and subconsciously I knew I felt they were on my side.
So it was easy to see why many Catholics regarded the soldiers as enemies. I lived in a street of mixed religion, but even if you didn't go looking for trouble, trouble could come looking for you.
We were about, what, 10, 11?
10, 11. 4 or 5 soldiers came over each hedge, like the Grand National, and they came straight through.
They were with those big rifles. What were they called?
SLRs.
SLRs, and there's us standing there with our mouths hanging open thinking, what's this? It was like something from a movie or something, wasn't it?
Down.
It was a dark Friday night, and then we were all pushed down onto the ground. It was like a scene from Iraq.
That's right.
And they took us off in various directions, and they checked out our identity. And what had we done? What were we doing?
Played in your back garden.
Kicking football or something. And then when they checked us all out, and it was all okay, and they realised we were up to nothing, they just took off. They trooped down there.
The side of the house.
March, and a big armoured car arrived, the Saracen. Yeah, it came and took them all away. And then we run inside to see mum and dad, to say,
Unaware.
You
they
never
were sick.
guessed.
Yeah.
You never guessed what happened to us. We were arrested. The army had us, they detained us, and they didn't believe a word we said.
Wise up. That's it.
Yeah, wise up.
But amid all that mayhem, families tried to carry on as they'd always done. But the most basic things, like getting an education even, were a challenge.
I don't think we ever had a full week, certainly not a full fortnight, without schooling being disrupted. Whether it was your bus being hijacked, whether it was a barricade being built out there, whether it was a riot, some sort of demonstration, power cut strikes, all sorts of things going on. All around this school, some of the places that saw the worst of the Troubles and suffered most. New Lodge, Lower Shankill, Crumlin Road, Ardoyne, Old Park. Collectively, that was known as the Murder Triangle. It was difficult to get to school. Almost every week there was some sort of problem. But once you were inside here, there was no talk of politics. It was a place of learning. It was a place of peace. It was an oasis in a sea of turmoil out there.
My school, St Malachy's College, was a Catholic grammar. My Protestant friends had their own schools. Our education may have been different, but as the Troubles went on, our problems would be the same.
You know, a friend of mine who went to school, his father was murdered. We had our science teacher who was caught in crossfire.
I know enough Protestants who have lost people, you know. I know a lot of people in the police who lost colleagues. I know people who lost spouses. I know people who lost children.